Okay guys, at the beginning of this video you saw me, I was cutting the firewall up at Dean's Pontiac, and basically because I just wanted to cut it up so I could create more work. But no, just joking. Anyway, we're going to talk about today, we're going to do a how-to on putting a 409 in this Pontiac. Now it's a scene where you've got a 55 Chevy or 56 or 57 Chevy, they're all the same. Pontiac's the same bloody thing. So what you saw was I was cutting out the firewall back in here. Basically what I did, if you paid attention at the very beginning, you saw that this actual piece, I reused it, was over this way more. If you can understand what I mean, it was over this way. So I've moved it over. I reused the old piece just because it had a nice curvature, and then I put a piece in the center. The reason we're doing this is when you put the big block motors in, they have a tendency of getting very close to the back of the firewall and even sometimes rubbing and hitting and giving you grief. And I like to build everything so there's access. Now, if you go on many forums on how to put a motor in these cars, they will tell you that the motors, usually they'll tell you the first thing you're going to run into is valve cover clearance on the passenger side, steering box clearance with the exhaust manifolds, and what is the third one? God, why can't... Oh, the oil pan, that big obviously one. The center link on the oil pan, the two of them, they don't mate together. You've got to change your pan. But we're not to that point right now. Right now, we're just getting the motor in here so you can see what's going on. So I cut the firewall out. I welded in my pieces, like I just said, and now I've set the motor in. Now what Dean did was Dean had a motor mount kit that he bought from a place called Dan Chuck. Now actually I shouldn't say it came from Dan Chuck. Dan Chuck is a manufacturer of these mounts, but we bought these out at the old car center out in Langley. And what they do is there's some factory rivets here on the frame. You drill the rivets out and these mounts just go right down in here. Now make sure you ask for big block, because big block and small block are a different mount. What this actually does, believe it or not, it actually does bring the motor 3/4 of an inch forward ahead. So at the end of the day, I could have squeaked this motor in here and the valve cover would have been just very, very tight against the firewall, but it would have been so tight it would have been a nuisance to try and get it off. And like I say, when you're building something, you want to have it so if you break down the side of the road or in the future you want to do something to it, you want to be able to work on it and get to things. You don't want to have to be ripping fenders off and ripping everything apart to get to it. So the first thing is we bought the Dan Chuck mounts, we put them in. Proper mounts for the motor. We changed our firewall, we did that. We haven't addressed at all the oil pan yet. Now our next biggest thing that we've got, come around to the driver's side. Now Dean is just running the stock manifolds, exhaust manifolds on here. We've got, this is again an aftermarket steering box that we got again out of the old car center. Good group of guys down there. It's made by CPP and it allows for power steering. You can see where the hoses hook up. But it mounts right back where the factory steering box would. But you can see, you can just barely see there, we've maybe got 1/8 of an inch of clearance between the manifold and that. And the only reason we've even got that much clearance is because you can see I had to slightly grind this down a little bit and I had to slightly take a hair off the manifold. Now I will pull the motor back out and I'll continue this video and show you a little closer what we had to do. But if you also grab it, we'll get the camera girl here, and if she comes around here, I'll change spots with her. If you look down in here, this manifold, if you can see where my finger's pointing down here, we've got plenty of clearance, but originally there wasn't clearance here either. I had to cut the manifold and take a little piece out of there, and I had Bruce, the old-time hot rod guy in town, Bruce Brown, he took a piece and he took a thick piece of metal and he put it back in there and he brazed it in. And just so we'd have the clearance on the manifold. Now yes, you can put headers on these cars, and you can play with that center pipe there. You can play with it and put a header on there and make it work. Dean wanted to go with the stock exhaust manifold, so when he wants this car, like I said in many of the videos before, he wants it to look stock, except it's got disc brakes, power steering, it's lowered 2 inches all the way around, and when he pops the hood, he's got a 409 in there. I mean, how cool is that? So he didn't want to start running headers and all that kind of bullshit. He just wanted to keep it, he basically is trying to make the car look like it would have came with this motor. So that's the reason we didn't run headers on it. Now if you do notice though, if there is ever a problem with this exhaust manifold, if there's ever a gasket that blows out, I want people to realize this. If ever this gasket blows out, there's a bolt way back under here, which you can't see, but you ain't getting that bolt out. And even if you could, you can't get that manifold off. So what do you got to do? You got to disconnect your steering from the steering. You have to disconnect your pitman arm. You're going to have to undo the 3 bolts down in here. And you're just, luckily there's no nuts on the other side. You're going to pull them bolts out and your steering box is going to have to lift straight out. Then you're going to have to get your manifold off of there. So yes, It sure looks awesome to put either a 348 or a big block 409 in there, but I tell you, it's going to be a nuisance if you ever have an exhaust leak on this side. It's just going to be a complete pain in the ass. But with that being said, I just want to help some guys out there that are trying to do this. I've read many forums up on how to do this myself. I was reading up on them, and there were some good pictures on there, but it's always nice to have a video. The next thing you want to do is, obviously I got my degree thing here. You want to make sure the motor sits at 3 degrees. 3 to 4 degrees, you want to make sure it's sitting at. Right now, if I set this on here, no matter where I set it, a nice level surface is where you want to set it. I'm sitting at 5 degrees at the moment, but that's only because my tranny is just sitting on a jack. I haven't actually got it bolted up to the tranny mount yet properly. So once I do that, which I already did earlier, it does line up. So we'll get the motor taken back out. We'll get back here and we'll show you what we actually shaved away from the steering box and the manifold. And hopefully this will help some people out that are putting 348s or 409s into their Tri-Fi Chevys. Okay, we'll be right back. Okay guys, so the motor is out of the car now, so I'm going to show you this. I took the manifold off just so you see it a little better here. So what happened is this manifold, on this stock manifold, it kind of came out like this, if you can imagine that. It was kind of bumped out, and it wouldn't clear the steering box. I shouldn't say it wouldn't, it was jammed tight against the box. So I cut that piece out, and then I got a good piece of 1/4 inch metal here, and I gave it to Bruce, and Bruce brazed in this piece, which gives us plenty of clearance. Now, if you can look carefully here, you can see I did a little bit of grinding right here. After we got this to clear, then the motor sat down in the hole properly. It was sitting up on the edge of the steering box. So I will show you that on the steering box, but this is, anyone's putting a 409 in, this is the manifold that was on this motor. It's the correct manifold. I had to cut it back there, like I say, and now we're going to show you this piece. So, I'll hold on to this actually, and we'll bring you around here. I don't know if you can see this on the camera. Oh shit, how well it's going to show up. I should have a light in here, but this top lid is a cover, and if you can see, just right here of my finger, there's like the thickness of a finger. You can see I'm picking at it. It's the thickness of a fingernail. Well, that there is what I've done here. That is where on this manifold right here, basically the manifold was right up in there, smashing against it. So I ground down that thickness until it was flush with the plate. I ground it down there. I grinded a little bit off the manifold here, and now when the manifold is actually bolted in, it was hard for you to see earlier, but if you can see that, there's how much clearance I actually have. Now I don't have the motor in, but that is how much clearance I got. And of course when the motor torques, it torques towards the passenger side. It torques away from it. So everything is going to be fine. And of course, like I say, you can see this piece here. Well, that was where it was rubbing there. We've got the clearance there too. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit. So Dan chuck mounts will move your motor forward 3/4 of an inch roughly. This is the CPP power steering box that we put in. Had to nib a little bit off the edge, not a big deal. 409 factory exhaust manifold, had to cut this piece out. Our next big dilemma that we're working on next is the oil pan. Now the oil pan hits, and what you can do is you can go to a place online. It's called East Coast Chevy, I believe. You have to give them your center link, and they take it in turn. And what they'll do is they will give you a center link that's either drop 2 or 3 inches to clear your factory oil pan. I believe they want 145 American. Plus, of course, you've got to ship your old one down there. So the time you're done and finished, depending whether you're American or Canadian. For me, being a Canadian guy, I'm probably going to be into it for 300, 350 bucks. For a 2 to 3 inch dropped center link, which then you can use your stock oil pan. Or you can start looking up other places, like you can look up Moroso or, oh God, I can't remember. There's a place called Steph's. They make oil pans, and what they do is they make the oil pans so the sump is a little further back, and the pickup tube, they give you a correct pickup tube. And what happens then is basically you can leave then the stock drag link. You can leave the stock drag link, but they make a pan that clears the drag link. But again, that's a pricey item also. So it kind of depends on which way you want to go. If you're a good fabricator, or you know a good fabricator or a good welder, you can just take off your stock pan and you can probably fuck around with it too and make it work, right? I mean, that's what they did back in the day. Back in the day, people played with things. If you go on the website, I'm sure even some of you guys out there watching me on YouTube will say, I had one of those Tri-Fi Chevys and I put a big 409 in it and I did this and did that. And this is not the only way to do it. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. I'm just trying to help the guys out that don't know how to do it. Hopefully this video helps out. This is one way of doing it. Different oil pan or a different dropped center link. Your choice. Grind the exhaust manifold or buy headers and make your header fit, which you can do. Most people would run headers. Dean didn't want to run headers. So at the exhaust manifold, that's what we had to modify. So there you go. So there's several different ways. Right now I have to figure out what Dean wants to do, whether he's going to go with the drop center link or he's going to go with the oil pan. So until that time comes, this video is over. So hopefully it's a good how-to. Hopefully it helped you guys out. And that's all I got to show you right there. And that's it. And thanks for subscribing. Remember, it's always a good time at old time, especially when Dave the Legend is not around. That's right, Dave. It's always a good time when Dave's not here. See you later.